Some dare call it conspiracy.
Welcome to the Some Dare Call It Conspiracy podcast, hosted by Brent Lee and Neil Sanders. After nearly 20 years exploring the world of conspiracy culture, we are taking our guests and listeners on a guided tour of the rabbit hole. Our mission? To discover where the truth lies.
Anyway, he goes on to ask you about backmasking. You play it backwards and it says all kinds of satanic stuff. And he says that, is there anything that you've ever experienced yourself, with people who were around in that era of backmasking? And so just to give people an idea, backmasking is when you play a record backwards, it has a hidden message there. And artists who've been accused of backmasking include Zeppelin, the Beatles, Pink Floyd, ELO, Queen, Styx, Judas Priest, the Eagles, the Rolling Stones, Jefferson Starship, AC/DC, Rush, Britney Spears, and Eminem. Now, the Beatles were involved in the spread of backmasking, both as a recording technique and as the center of controversy. So they did actually do some backmasking, like by which they sort of played things in a reverse to give an effect and in order to put onto certain records. But the controversy has its roots in 1969 when WKNR-FM DJ Russ Give received a phone call from a student at the Eastern Michigan University who identified himself simply as Tom. And the caller asked about the rumor that Beatle Paul McCartney had died and claimed that the Beatles song Revolution 9 contained a backwards message confirming the rumor. So Gibb played the song backwards on his turntable and he heard the phrase, do you know the phrase on Revolution 9?
Paul is dead?
Turn me on, dead man.
Okay, I thought it was I'm sure it was something to do with Paul.
Apparently, also on there, that was the one that he spotted. If you play it at a certain other point, you're quite right. It says, Paulie's dead man, miss him, miss him, miss him. Oh, no, sorry, that's on the track I'm So Tired, which is also on the White Album, I believe. Also, if you get, what's it fucking called? Magical Mystery Tour. And if you play that backwards at the start of the guitar solo, it says, Paul McCartney's been dead for ages. Honestly, we can't believe we got away with this, which some seen as damning. The ELO were accused of hiding a backwards satanic message in their 1974 album, El Dorado. The title track, El Dorado, was said to contain the message, he is the nasty one. Christ, you're infernal. It is said that we are dead men. Everyone who has the mark will live. So, Styx in 1981 were accused of putting the backward message, Satan moves through our voices, on the song Snowblind, which is on their album Paradise Theatre. One of the more famous ones is on Led Zeppelin's Stairway to Heaven. Apparently, if you play a portion of this backwards, it results in the words, here's to my sweet Satan. And another widely known one is from Queen's song, Another One Bites the Dust. Do you know what apparently it says on this?
Start to smoke marijuana.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it's ridiculous. Like now there have been, when people have examined it, it's like how would you even begin to do that? It's like an auditory, it's a glitch. It's like they've not done it on purpose. How would you even begin to discover how to make a phrase like my sweet Satan using backwards instrumentation? You can do it through speaking. We used to do it. Like we used to speak into a thing. We found a program where you could reverse it, and then you would say the reverse thing, and it would come back as a sort of weird alien version of you saying it. So you can do it using your voice just by thinking. But you can't construct it with instruments. Like it's just ridiculous.
I think you're missing the point that it's demons.
Satan. Yes,
that have written this.
No, that's true. Yeah, that is true, actually.
They're thinking in a different dimension. They can tell how to write this incantation forwards and backwards.
Yeah,
that would be the argument, at least.
No, that's fair. That does actually make sense. I was going to say what the thing we used to do backwards, but the only one I can remember is horrific. And if my sense of humor is what it is now, what it was when I was about 14 is probably not cultured. Anyway, the serial killer Richard Ramirez, when he was on trial in 1998, stated that AC/DC's music, and specifically the song Night Prowler on Highway to Hell, inspired him to commit murder. There was a reverse speech advocate called David John Oates that claimed that Highway to Hell on the album contains the backwards message, I am the law, my name is Lucifer, and she belongs in hell. And AC/DC's guitarist Angus Young actually responded. He was asked about this. He says, have you got messages, backmasked messages in the song Highway to Hell that suggest that people should be, interested in the devil and such like that? To which he sort of responded with a slightly cocked eye that you don't need to play the album backwards. We never hid the message. We called the album Highway to Hell. Do you know, there is actually a genuine example where somebody actually went out of their way to put a backmasked message on one of their records, and the message said, Satan, raised in hell, I'm going to burn your soul, crush your bones, I'm going to make you bleed, you're going to bleed for me. This is the earliest instance of a true backtracked message referencing Satan. And I'll give you a clue. It was in 1981.
Oh. Burt Bacharach.
Not exactly. It was fucking Venom.
Yeah.
Venom did it for a joke. Venom are amazing. It's so good, isn't it? But anyway, so that's what backmasking is. And Garth obviously believes in this and thinks that this is definitely some sort of thing, appealing to the subconscious, speaking to the brain in ways that aren't immediately obvious. This is right up his dad's alley. His work speaks to it and has mentioned it in the past. But Coco says, oh, no, not really. I would say if they're putting subconscious messages into the music, that would be done in a way that you couldn't figure it out. So, no, you can reverse the music the CD or the vinyl, and you can hear the message. And I would say that's pretty much foolproof, because if you can unravel and find the trick, then the subliminal message isn't going to work. So if there's a subliminal message, you're not going to know about it. And it's, yeah. Yeah, fair enough. So we're sure that subliminal messages exist. It's just that we're not able to find them because they're so well hidden. Like the fiends. Like, who knew? Like, Garth then tells a story about how when he was briefly a radio DJ, he got into trouble because he played this American folk song that he thought was really beautiful. But then found out after the fact that it was actually written by Charles Manson. And I would have thought that the song was probably Always Is Always Forever. Manson was again, here's another thing. People claim that Manson was influenced by the Beatles and such like that. Go and listen to Manson's music. It doesn't sound like the Beatles at all. It really doesn't. But basically, she then starts to go on basically saying that when Manson talks, she claims that it's indication that he's under MKUltra mind control, and it absolutely isn't. But she then says that basically she's seen other people under mind control who talk exactly like that. And I'm like, no, you haven't. You just haven't. And she then says when they go into panic or distress, they have this same way of talking, and they have this same look in their eyes and the same awkward facial expressions and movements. And it's 100% mind control. It's MKUltra, Monarch, trauma-based mind control stuff going on. Monarch, as we've discussed, was a sex slave program that almost certainly did not exist. So it's definitely not that. Literally, the only evidence that monarch exists is the books of Cathy O'Brien and Bryce Taylor. And then a question that has been taken out of context, where basically someone was asking about mind control programs to the director of the CIA, and he says, do you do mind control programs like blah, 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 and monarch anymore? And he turned around and said, we haven't done that for 20 years. And people have said, oh, he said monarch. That's a tacit admission that monarch was a real thing. It's not. He's referring to broader mind control programs. But anyway, she says, my grandmother was actually friends with Sharon Tate, who died. Yeah, Sharon Tate. My grandmother and grandparents were friends with her. So that's what. So she's actually that close to the family. It's very strange to say that these things are close to the family. I actually lived in Laurel Canyon as well when I was 6 years old. Now, I think you spotted the potential red flag there.
Actually, I want to go back to one quick little thing that you didn't highlight that she said.
Oh,
which I thought was really, really funny. When she mentioned about Charles Manson and these people who are mind controlled, blah, 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 she said when they start talking incoherently, yada, 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 she called it psychobabble.
Yeah.
Which, obviously, that's not what psychobabble is, but what she's doing is psychobabble.
Oh, interesting. Yes. Yeah. Very good point. Yeah. No. Yeah. Totally. No.
Isn't that incredible?
Right, yeah. Yes. Yeah. She's word salading it up, trying to give an air of authority, and yeah, absolutely. What Charles Manson was doing was slang. Like, give me any speech of Charles Manson. Like, I had a passing interest in Charles Manson, and I'll tell you what he's actually saying. It's nothing to do with mind control. The principal main sort of evidence that Charles Manson was not involved in mind control, aside from the fact that there's no evidence that he was involved in mind control, was that the only prisons and facilities that he went to in which mind control experiments took place, he was put in them after his crimes, years after the experiments had stopped. So he was put in Vacaville for one. And there were experiments that were done on prisoners in Vacaville, but they were done in the 50s. Like, so it's all nonsense, this idea that Charles Manson was part of any sort of mind control thing. But there's a massive red flag there, right, that they're not going to talk about. Her grandmother was friends with Sharon Tate, okay? So who does that mean that her grandmother was also friends with? But must have been Roman Polanski. Exactly. And in the conspiracy world, there's no love for Roman Polanski, because shortly after the death of Sharon Tate, he drugged and raped a 13-year-old girl and then fled to France to avoid prosecution. Well, actually, it wasn't to avoid prosecution, it was to avoid jail time. And he wasn't, I don't think he was convicted of rape, but he was, anyway, quite rightly, people say, Roman Polanski, the fuck? What the fuck? And but obviously that is usually sort of given as an indication of, oh, look, the elites with a young girl, they're vaguely connected to, well, obviously connected to the film industry, vaguely connected to the music industry through friends and such like that. This is an indication that that's the wrongness that goes on behind the scenes. But they're not going to touch on that. They're basically just going to use it as a way to connect themselves to Charles Manson and talk about Charles Manson in a way that's got nothing to do with what Charles Manson was about. Anyway, I actually lived in Laurel Canyon as well when I was 6 years old. And I thought she moved there when she was 15, but like, no, it doesn't matter. Anyway, Garth, so wow, did you see anything when you were there? I mean, it's hard. You're trying to remember, of course, remember when you were there, 6. And this is basically, we're now on to, what episode are we in this series? We're now on to the meat of Coco's talk. And when I say meat, I don't really mean meat. I mean, you sort of, 6-month-old Linda McCartney simulation meat that wouldn't. Have you ever tried vegan bacon? It tastes like someone describing smoky bacon crisps down a bad phone line. Fucking hell.
Tempe? Is that
Tempe or something? No, like that? I think it was called Faken, although that might have been a clever nickname that I made up for it. I also thought that artificial would be good for like fake fish, but you know, Saatchi and Saatchi never called me back. So what can you do? I probably should have phoned them. Actually, they're an advertising firm and have nothing to do with the naming of product. Anyway, so this is the meat of it. Coco, of course, I'm pretty sure something has happened to me when I was there in Laurel Canyon. I had these sort of dreams, and they didn't seem like dreams, where in the night I was taken from my room down the road to another person's house, and it seemed like a dream, but not really a dream. Perhaps it could have been an out-of-body experience, or I could have been involved, or I could have been under the influence of drugs or something like that. But I definitely remember something like that. And around the same time, because I was only in LA for like 2 years of my life, same between the age of 5 and 6, somewhere between 5 and 7. It was about 2 years. I'm like, so 2 points, right? First and loudest. Is that it? Is this the fucking, that this is what it's all been leading up to? Like, with the greatest of respect, that is shit. That is shit. That is, come on. We've sat through all this bollocks. I've filled in the blanks for you because you can't be bothered to do your bastard research. And ultimately, that's the payoff, that you vaguely remember something that might have been a dream or something. Well, let's have a look at it, right? Okay, you thought it was a dream. You say that it felt like a dream, but not really a dream. But perhaps it could have been an out-of-body experience, or you could have been under the influence of drugs or something. And I'm like, yeah. Or maybe it was a dream. But several things, right? Okay, one, right? That would mean that your mum would have to be involved.
Here we go.
Wouldn't
Here
it?
we go. Yeah.
Surely. Like, that would mean that your mum would have to be involved. So are we not going to touch on that? She's essentially what? So they've given you to the industry age 5 or 6, or at the very least, she's moved to an area where that can happen, because this is what she points out. So Laurel Canyon is known for Jared Leto's house. You know about Jared Leto's house? He bought a house there, which was once a secret underground facility for Hollywood to film propaganda films with the CIA. And when she said, like, Jared Leto's house is now known for very, very different and horrible things. Like, but the building it used to be called Lookout Mountain Air Force Station, and this is also spoken about again. She's got this from Dave McGowan's book, because it overlooks Laurel Canyon. And it was used by the US military as a top security film studio from 1947 to 1969. And it's Lookout Mountain Air Force Station, which is abbreviated to LMAFS, which is so close to Loud as a Motherfucker, which was the Heartbreakers album. And its main purpose was to produce classified motion pictures and still photographs for the DoD and the Atomic Energy Commission. So what they did at this place was they documented nuclear tests. They filmed explosions going off with like specialized film stocks that could take the radiation, and then it was taken back to Lookout facility for processing, editing, and then storage. They had like a massive sort of like bunker there where films could be stored. They also made training films. One was called Escape and Evasion, which taught downed pilots what to do, if you crash behind enemy lines or whatever. They also made PSAs, public service announcements, public films, and military newsreels and documentaries about the Vietnam War. It was also a World War II air defense center. That was before it was a film studio, basically. But there was a lot of Hollywood collaboration. The LMAFS was a full-service production facility drawing heavily on local Hollywood talent. Civilian and military personnel with top secret clearance collaborated on projects with some well-known figures like John Ford, Jimmy Stewart, Ronald Reagan, and Bob Hope, involved in various capacities. Now, Bob Hope, the Air Force provided film crews and equipment to document Bob Hope's annual Christmas tours to entertain troops in Vietnam and other overseas bases. And this was also then later used for his NBC television specials. John Ford, he directed a film about Southeast Asia for the facility in 1959. And Jimmy Stewart would basically narrate films. Also, Ronald Reagan and Marilyn Monroe, they've been connected to the facility, but nobody's entirely sure. And Marilyn Monroe was blonde, so it's probably mind control. Gregory Peck also did voiceovers. And here, Walt Disney also apparently used the facilities. Now, Operation Ivy was a series of nuclear tests conducted at the Eniwetok Atoll in the Marshall Islands in 1952. And its main purpose was to test experimental devices based on thermonuclear principles. Basically, this is when they were escalating experiments into nuclear weapons. And the series included 2 major detonations. Mike, which was in November 1st, 1952. And this was the first successful full-scale test of a thermonuclear weapon using the Teller Ulam design. The device was an experimental prototype weighing 74 tons and using liquid deuterium as its fusion fuel. And its massive explosion yielded 10.4 megatons of TNT, almost 500 times the yield of the bomb dropped on Nagasaki. And the second was King, which was November the 15th, 1952. So 2 weeks later. And this was the highest yield pure fission atomic bomb ever tested. And it was intended as a backup in case the Mike fusion test had failed, although it didn't fail. So they just decided to do it anyway, because they love them sort of blowing up some bombs. But I don't know whether you've spotted something there. Something that I think the conspiracy crowd have missed. Operation Ivy was this test, this nuclear test, yeah? But Operation Ivy was also one of the finest ska punk bands ever.
My ears perked up when you said it.
The Operation Ivy films were processed at the Lookout Studios facility. Well, Operation Ivy were only bloody signed to Lookout Records, weren't they?
Shit.
Fucking, isn't it?
Right?
That proves it, Brent. That proves it.
Well, I don't know what it proves, but
it's bound to prove something. it proves it, Brent. Just it proves it. So basically, like, yeah, what did they do? This was it. They also were actually quite influential in new filming techniques, 3D photography, CineVert, and VistaVision, which were basically, all of this came about from which was then used in sort of Hollywood films for certain film stocks and effects and to make things look better on the screen, all came about because they were conducting these experiments, essentially filming nuclear explosions. And so the radiation was so incredible that that they needed to test different devices and different lenses and all sorts of different things, basically. The studio even earned an Academy Award nomination for developing the M45 camera mount, which was used for filming the Air Force Thunderbirds demonstration squadron. So it was massively influential, but not in the way that they think. There's a sort of myth that is sort of postulated and populated by Dave McGowan that there must have been something nefarious going on because it was there and it's vaguely connected to the army and no one knows exactly what's going on. So it's almost like the sort of film studio equivalent of Area 51. And that is that's the facility. It was decommissioned in 1969 and sold to Jared Leto in 2015. And in the same year, it was declared a Los Angeles historic cultural monument. But it was mostly to do with all the film stuff that it'd done and less to do with the fact that Jared Leto lived there. Anyway, Coker continues, and he bought the house and because he found it fascinating. And you can see pictures of the underground, the basement that they used to do these films. And a lot of them are not just propaganda films, but they're films that no one's ever seen because they had specific purposes, like perhaps mind control purposes for soldiers and things like that. No, they didn't. And if no one's ever seen them, how do you know they exist? That comes directly from Dave McGowan and his speculation that they must have been doing something nefarious there. It's a huge underground space. I have memories of being in a huge underground space. I don't believe you. But anyway, I'm not sure whether it was Jared Leto's house. I'm sure they have plenty of other spaces. I mean, it is Hollywood. It is the Hollywood world. So they have a lot of movie sets and movie props and things around which are very useful if you want to do mind control on somebody. So she's decided that she's had mind control done on herself. And this is because she's vaguely remembered a dream from when she was 6 that may have been a dream or may not have been a dream that was connected when she started to research the conspiracy world, specifically after her artist and music careers failed and COVID started and she was on the internet a lot.
And she had been courted by these people, though. She said
Well,
for 10 years.
Well, apparently so. Like, but she doesn't ever really explain exactly how. Like, I mean, and it sounds like courted. How do you mean courted? So, was this when you were trying to be a writer? Was this when you were trying to be a musician? Was this when you were trying to be a sculptor or a painter? Was this when you were trying to get cash out the back of being related to your grandfather because he's Donovan?
Was it your grandfather?
Well,
if he was doing exhibitions with you.
How do you mean?
Like her grandfather was doing exhibitions with her.
Yeah.
He was getting her famous.
Oh, yeah, I see. Yeah,
her exhibitions.
Oh, yeah. So he was helping.
Was it your grandfather that was putting you through this thing? Because obviously he's a Freemason, or his father was a Freemason, and he was put. So come on, make it make sense.
No, that's perfect. So when you said, "Was it your grandfather?" I went, "Does Brent mean that maybe like she's got secret different parents, like Satanism?" But anyway, they then go on to talk about this psychobabble, which they think is a sign of mind control. And he says, Garth talks about seeing it in political settings, and he's particularly thought of this because he's reminded of when Donald Trump said words like "kerfuffle" or whatever that word was, and Joe Biden was all over the place. And Coco responds, Biden was constant. Trump is much more lucid than Biden, I'm sure. And at this point, I have to stop this because it's like 2 points. One, Trump typed kerfuffle, right?
Yep.
He fucking typed it. And 2, Biden was 80 and had early onset dementia. Like, for fuck's sake, it's not a sign. What would be the fucking point of mind controlling someone who's 80? Like, seriously. Oh, well, he's the president. Oh, come on. And I thought none of these people were the president anyway. I thought they were all like, part of like just puppets to the occult overlords or whatever. But who knows? But she says, I've seen it. I've seen all this mind control because she grew up on an island that was full of very powerful individuals, lots of politicians, lots of criminals, lots of very influential people. It's a small island with 7 Masonic lodges. I checked and it's 11 actually, but which is insane because it's a small fucking island. So yes, I've seen these things done that you would consider maybe normal people, but who have, let's say, politicians in their family. And I've seen it 100%. I've seen what they do to people. I've seen it's not just in the entertainment industry. Would you care to elaborate on this clearly made up shit? Like, because that would be lovely, because then it at least give us something to give our teeth into. It's like, so Garth asks her like, oh, well, hang on, because I grew up on an island. He grew up on the Isle of Wight, and that's full of Freemasonic lodges as well. And Coco points out that she was born in Mallorca. And they both think this is very strange because, they're both brought up on islands with lots of Masonic lodges.
Mm.
You had a point about that, didn't you? I got initially spotted.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, mate, it reminded me of you. It didn't remind me of my childhood because I'm connected to the U.S. military. I grew up
obviously, yeah, that was
in Germany and America. These are continents.
Yes,
but you grew up on an island with very influential people and a shit ton of Masonic temples here.
There's loads. There's loads in the United Kingdom. It's fucked. Absolutely. We're encircled, aren't we? So it's like, come on.
So you must know everything.
Absolutely. I have an insight, but like, but no.
That's our brand. Hold on. You do know everything.
But anyway, Garth says, but this must be a thing islands are a powerful place for a reason, and they would want to be there for a reason. And it's like, what? So wondering what the island connection is. And Coco has thoughts, not sensible thoughts, but thoughts. Well, everyone moves to an island to get away from something to hide. It's like my grandparents when they went to the Joshua Tree Desert. That's not an island. It's a desert. In the middle of a continent.
On a continent, yeah. Here we go.
A lot of people from Hollywood would move into the desert so they could hide and do whatever they wanted to do. So yeah, Mallorca is a very magical place. It has strong, powerful spiritual energy. Well, utter shite. And there's magical spiritual energy. It attracts a lot of very bad people because they feel it. They want to be there. It also attracts very good people. So you get this mixed bag of very terrible people and very good people all living side by side. She's just describing the world. That's every village you've ever been to. And unfortunately, those good people can be drawn in the crosshairs of badness, which is what I've seen growing up, a lot of it. But again, she has no examples. So Garth picks up on the word Joshua Tree, and he's fully invested in this word association shit now. And he says, "Oh, Joshua Tree." And then I'm just thinking of, that album too. What are your thoughts on Bono? Because U2 had an album called Joshua Tree, which, as Alan Partridge says, he recorded part of it there and part of it there. Because he's one of those, we talk about obviously the political babbling, and then you talk about, the musicians, and he's kind of sort of half and half, isn't he, Bono? He's kind of like half a musician, half a politician, essentially. It's like, well, spot. It's almost as if like fame and wealth gives you an opportunity to be heard, isn't it? Not that basically like, that they've put these people in place to like give us opinions. I've been shouting about what should be doing with politics for ages, but nobody will listen to me. Like they might if I had a hit album, but stubbornly they refuse to give me a record contract too. Fucking Illuminati. Try to stifle the truth. Anyway, Garth says, "Have you ever had any dealings with Bono?" And Coco says, "No, but my mother's met him and she thinks she's an arsehole, and that's all I can say about that." And Garth says, "I agree." And I've never met him. And it's like, well, how would you agree if you've never met him? And then Coco
I agree
says,
with your mum.
Yeah. And then Coco says, "Yeah, no, she doesn't like him. I don't know. He seems like a very strange person, a very weird person. It's almost like he doesn't have any soul when you look at him." And I'm like, but you've just said that you've never met him either. Why have two people that never met Bono got such a strong opinion of Bono? And she says, U2 is one of the most successful bands in history, and Bono is a globally recognized figure with significant wealth and influence. Conspiracy theorists often assume that such success can only be achieved through affiliation. Oh, sorry. That's not her saying that. Scrap that bit. So basically, everybody's beef with Bono seems to be that basically he's in a very successful band, and obviously that's part of the Illuminati, and he's known for sort of advocacy work. He co-founded an organization called One, which was to fight extreme poverty. And One, oh God, like people, I've seen all sorts of bollocks. One, it's a reference to one eye, isn't it? And that's the eye of providence, which is Satanism. It's like, really? Really? Is that what we're doing? He's also basically like rubbed shoulders with sort of the globalists, World Economic Forum, and the United Nations, and things like that. But again, the thing is, like, it's because he's an influential figure. It's not because he's sort of part of some satanic sort of like cabal. Like, again, they don't ask me to do that because I've never had the success in the pop charts that you two have had. Thanks, Illuminati. Also, they point out that there's weird symbols on stage, like Zoo TV, and TVs are about mind control and stuff like that. So, whoa. They've also used pyramids and the Eye of Providence at concerts. And also, Bono adopted this character of Mac Fisto, a devilish, cynical rock star persona, which is often misinterpreted as a nod to occult or satanic affiliations. It sounds a little bit like Mephistopheles, which is the character in Faust, and so that's pretty much enough. But Garth has got another thing. He says, yeah, I know what you mean. I wonder what the glasses are about. Like, yeah, he's always wearing sunglasses indoor. And he took about 30 years to say it was something to do with an eye problem. But I'm thinking, well, you know, the eyes are the gateway to the soul. And at the same time, and suddenly, you know, you can't quite connect with that. So, you know, so
what is he waffling about?
He's suggesting that because he wears sunglasses, like he's using them so that you don't actually see his eyes, despite the fact that they're see-through glaucoma sunglasses, and that like they're not glaucoma sunglasses. They're somehow like a symbol of him being evil. Yeah, I know it's bullshit. Like he's very, very bullshit. But hey ho. Have you ever had any experiences, you know, where other kids, essentially, of celebrities or musicians, you know, essentially, where you've had a conversation and said, we all grew up here, we grew up there, and actually your experiences are similar? And she says, well, I've had a conversation with a few kids, but not entertainment kids. As I said, I grew up in Mallorca, so it's full of power. And wherever there is power, you have these systems of control. And so a kid who grows up with a family who has a military officer, or a family, or a politician, or a family who has a gangster, or who has a singer, we all have similar lives. It's like, no, you do not. No, you absolutely do not. How stupid. In fact, people like, even in the same industry, like the children of musicians aren't treated uniformly. Like, even in the real world, right? Okay. The children of, like, I would be astonished if everybody who works at the firm that I work at, right? Okay. And when I say firm, I don't mean gangster firm. Treats their children in exactly the same uniform way. Of course they don't. It's ridiculous, basically. And anyway, so Gaz goes on to say, well, that's very interesting, isn't it? And he's done the word association thing again. He's heard the word gangster. So this is where he's going. And I suppose they kind of live like you mentioned earlier, and they all intertwine. They're not necessarily exclusive, you know. It's just one big thing, isn't it? No. And I think you'll find that, as well as a lot of musicians, they tend to be surrounded by gangsters. I'm thinking now, obviously, the Cranes, very famous ones here in England. They were surrounded by musicians and actresses and actors, and it's almost as if they're all in there together. In terms of Freemasonry, though, I've always found this interesting because I've met a few Freemasons in my life who all claim to be low level, claiming to be a lot of the time that they're just conspiracy theories. Well, do you think that most Freemasons are a little bit more aware, or that they let actually some of them are genuinely just, well, you know, good for business? I don't know. And so he's mentioned the Craze there, but he's also mentioned like Freemasons. So we will come back to the Craze in a second, because what he's alluding to there is something that he doesn't mention, and unless you were, say, well entrenched in this, you wouldn't actually understand what he's talking about. But it's quite deep, and we should come on to that in a second. But Coco has ideas about Freemasonry. She says she seems to think that it depends what country you come from, because she says that despite the fact that anyone could become a Freemason in America and other countries, you can't. Like, and she seems to suggest that in the UK you can't become a Freemason unless you have some sort of knowledge of the occult and are sort of put up by certain people. You have to be. She seems to suggest it's more class-based in the UK and more connected to sort of secret societies and stuff like that. And that is absolute shite. I've got friends that were Freemasons, and all you do is you turn up I've been to one. They have Freemason open days where you can go in and look around the lodge, and they ask you at the end if you'd like to become a Freemason. They asked me if I wanted to become a Freemason. At the time, I didn't have enough money to join, but I would have done to learn the secrets. That would have been why I'd have joined at the time. Now I might do it because they do put on quite a nice lunch, apparently. But no, this is absolute nonsense. Like in the UK, all you need to be is over the age of 18. There's over 7,000 lodges. Students are able to join one of the 87 university scheme lodges. Women are invited. Yeah. So this is absolute nonsense. And they're basically suggesting that Freemasonry is this sort of grandiose network of people. And he says, Garth says, I know a guy called Guy Anderson I interviewed, really nice guy. He joined the Freemasons for that reason, to learn this knowledge. And they kicked him out in the end when they realized what he was up to. But he was just trying to get as much knowledge as he could. And, you know, he told me a few things that he managed to get out, a bit of knowledge, but probably not as much as he'd like, because as I say, they kicked him out. But so I looked into this Guy Anderson, right? And I was going to sort of like do a bit about Freemasonry. And then I found out that Guy Anderson has done lectures on Tartaria and human cloning. And he claims that he was kicked out of this Freemasonry because he was getting too close to the truth. But if you actually kind of look at it, it seems to be that he was actually being a bit of a dick. And so they kicked him out. Tartaria is the idea that there's this ancient civilization that only the Illuminati knows, that has been hidden from mainstream society. And people don't tend to know about it because years and years ago, it was covered by mud. And evidence of this long-lost civilization includes windows on a floor level people who work in those buildings would say that they're like, you know, windows for the basement and stuff like that. They're not. They're the emergent, covered up top floors of ancient Tartarian civilizations that were covered by the mud. And when you sort of know that and know that this man believes that shit, you decide, I'm not wasting any fucking time with that.